Gambia, Angola, China Holding, Gash, producers of the finest tomato paste in the Gambia. Jaja tomato paste, available in 5 kilos, 1 kilo and in sachets. For wholesale and retail, visit our factory at Banjulonding. We are also producers of Jaja mineral water, cool, clear and fresh. Gash, Gambia, Angola, China Holding, with headquarters at Fatu Golden Plaza, Mile 7, Bertel Harding Highway. Gash Group also provides the best security company, Gash Security, for your offices, warehouses, homes and personal property. Gash Group for all your construction projects, offering you quality water reticulation for your gardens, pump irrigation, tidal irrigation projects and all types of buildings. You can contact Gash on 396-7894, 700-8993, 373-0259. Visit us at Gash Global Group on Battle Harden Highway, Fatu Golden Plaza. Our website www.gashglobal.com. Gambia, Angola, China Holding, Gash.
It's a warm welcome to our studio here in Serekunda. This is Star TV News with me, Jacqueline Coley. In our top stories, the Gambia COVID-19 update. The Banjul Council launches Coronavirus Know Your Status initiative. We must know what COVID-19 embodies before we can address the challenges it possesses, says Honorable Sala. Vendors at Saregama Market comply with public health regulations. On the international scene, U.S. Health Secretary's Taiwan visit angers China. Beirut corruption fears persist amid foreign donation offers. In South Africa, a woman is killed every 3 hours. Those were the headlines, and now the news in details. Reported on 9 August 2020 by the Ministry of Health and Social Welfare on COVID-19, on Sunday there were 145 confirmed cases. The total number of cases the country has registered since March is now 1,235. Dada Cham has the rest of the details.
4 new deaths recorded, making it 23. There are 991 active cases in treatment, with 146 COVID-19 recoveries since March 2020. The country currently has 339 people in quarantine. Association of Resident Doctors, the Gambia, released a statement that they are concerned to inform the public all the toll COVID-19 has on doctors of this country who are members of the Association of Resident Doctors, the Gambia. The association has 32 of the doctors who have tested positive for the virus. Some have been discharged. Majority are on home hotel isolation and 1 is admitted at the treatment center, sanatorium. 6 are in quarantine, home isolation. 28 have been discharged from the quarantine. They urge the public to take the necessary precaution and advice from the Ministry of Health and the World Health Organization. Meanwhile, Vice President Toure responded to treatment in which her second test for COVID-19 came out negative. The Office of the President published on their official Facebook page that Her Excellency, the Vice President Dr. Aissatou Toure, has been responding to treatment, and her second sample test result, which was conducted 5th August 2020, came out negative for COVID-19 on the 8th of August 2020. His Excellency has been informed of her negative test result, and he wishes all those infected a speedy and full recovery. The public is reminded that the coronavirus is real and exists in the Gambia. All and sundry are advised to properly use face masks, maintain regular hand washing and social distancing in the fight against the virus. Reporting for Star TV News, I am Dado Cham.
Mayoress Rohim Malik Low on Sunday led the way in getting tested for coronavirus, as her council, in partnership with volunteers from the Edward Francis Small Teaching Hospital, launched an initiative that will help the people of Banjul know their coronavirus status. Binta Koli reports.
Febar bi bugut tok di xaar lolu moy problème am so fekkee ne test nañ la xam nga ko rek ci saa si di nga mëna door di faju.
The mayoress has been at the forefront of efforts aimed at stopping the spread of the disease, including an in-person plea last week for a lockdown. Her call had been heeded after the declaration of a new state of public emergency by President Adama Barrow last Wednesday. The new initiative comes amid soar in coronavirus cases in the Greater Banjul area, which is now the epicenter of the pandemic. Over 1,000 people have been infected with the virus and 19 deaths registered. This initiative is part of the response of the City Council to help suppress the spread of the deadly virus within the city. And we appeal to everyone to come forward to be tested, said Mayoress Low during the launch of the Know Your Status initiative held at Banjul City Council on Sunday. The City Council said that 100 people will be tested at the start and will continue based on the availability of the medical team that will be conducting the tests. For Star TV News, I am Binta Kul.
Speaking to Honorable Halifa Sallah, National Assembly member for Serekunda, he shed light on the coronavirus preventive measures and how we can address the challenges it possesses in order to be safe from the virus. Yamudao Koka files in this report.
Honorable Halifa Sallah said that the coronavirus started on the 17th of March 2020, after which the first person infected was a medical practitioner working at the MRC laboratory where all sorts of diseases are made research on. He said that after the discovery of the invasion of the virus, everyone should have been alert, and initially many people were alerted. He further said that the government and the Ministry of Health saw the need to declare a state of public emergency on the 18th of March with the view of mobilizing the nation to be able to face the pandemic in order to prevent it from expanding its invasion in the Gambia. He said that there was a need for a COVID-19 policy that will drive a strategic plan for the virus.
That policy should have had two fundamental approaches: a preventive approach and an eradication approach. How do you prevent the illness? How do you eradicate it so that its prevalence will be extinguished on the face of our soil? Notwithstanding, measures were taken to be able to deal with the situation. We were informed that a National Health Emergency Committee had been created that was expected to take the lead in preparing the ground for the country to address the problem.
He added that after the declaration of the state of public emergency, regulations were put into force. The regulations dealt with open markets, closure of non-essential public places, which was aimed to deal with restricting transportation, and went further to deal with the issue of essential commodities being safeguarded, and further on the closing of the borders.
And further on to give rise to looking at the issue of closing the borders. Measures were taken. But we must understand the law in order to understand the measures and why they were necessary or unnecessary. Because this is a time to take stock. The Constitution envisaged that there could be a state of public emergency. Under Section 34 of the Constitution, it states very clearly that should there be a state of emergency or the possibility of a state of emergency, in that certain situation may exist that may be life-threatening.
Honorable Sallah urges the people to continue washing their hands regularly and maintaining safe distancing to fight the illness and prevent it from spreading. Notwithstanding, he also buttressed on the wearing of face masks, for it is equally an important preventive measure.
Make sure that the distance we maintain is meant for no other purpose but to ensure that each person is safe to fight the illness, to prevent it from spreading. That was the recommendation and is still the recommendation. Added to this is now the face mask. We wait for the health authorities to guide us in what to do to prevent the illness. They also made us to understand that this illness has no cure. It has no cure. But then people are told that somebody has contracted the illness, tested positive, but now the person is healthy again.
He concluded by saying that people should take part in contributing to its eradication than its escalation. Yamundo Koka, reporting for Star TV News.
The Saregama Market, one of the busiest markets in the country, had been the most quiet place on Sunday due to the new regulations released by the government of the Gambia last Wednesday. Dado Cham has more.
The government of the Gambia last Wednesday announced that the Public Health Dangerous Infectious Diseases Protection Regulation 2020 shall continue to operate side by side with these new accompanying regulations, which include all known food outlets in all markets throughout the Gambia shall remain closed. Exceptions are granted to banks and financial institutions, pharmacies, drugstores, supermarkets and mini-markets, local corner shops and essential food traders. The markets shall be open between 6 a.m. and 2 p.m. daily. All markets and shopping areas in the Gambia shall be closed on Sundays for cleansing or necessary fumigation by area and municipal councils. Looking at the environment on Sunday, all shops were closed, just as instructed by the government of the Gambia in the fight against the coronavirus. However, some people have been reacting on the issue as a bad step towards their businesses. An anonymous person told Star TV that she earns a living to help on the daily needs of her family. Therefore, this is a very difficult time for her and her family because they will sit at home thinking of what to feed on the next day. She urges the government to come to their aid during this time so that even if they are asked to stay home, they will have something to eat. Reporting for Star TV News, I am Dado Cham.
Those were the local stories. We'll be right back with the international stories after the short commercial break.
Gambia, Angola, China Holding, Gosh, producers of the finest tomato paste in the Gambia. Jeja tomato paste, available in 5 kilos, 1 kilo and in sachets. For wholesale and retail, visit our factory at Banjulanding. We are also producers of Jeja mineral water, cool, clear and fresh. Gosh, Gambia, Angola, China Holding, with headquarters at Fatu Golden Plaza, Mile 7 Bertel Harding Highway. Gash Group also provides the best security company, Gash Security, for your offices, warehouses, homes and personal property. Gash Group for all your construction projects, offering you quality water reticulation for your gardens, pump irrigation, tidal irrigation projects and all types of buildings. You can contact Gash on 396-7894, 700-8993, 373-0259. Visit us at Gash Global Group on Battle Harden Highway, Fatu Golden Plaza. Our website www.gashglobal.com. Gambia, Angola, China Holding, Gash.
On the international scene, the United States Health Secretary has just arrived in Taiwan for a visit that has angered China. Alex Azar's 3-day trip is being hailed as an opportunity to strengthen cooperation in combating COVID-19. But Beijing has warned President Donald Trump that the visit threatens peace and stability in the region. It is the highest level visit to the island by an American diplomat in more than 40 years. Al Jazeera's Sarah Clark reports.
It's a much anticipated visit. US Health Secretary Alex Azar is leading a delegation to Taiwan to learn from the island's success in fighting the coronavirus. The United States has recorded 5 million cases. Taiwan has fewer than 500. But analysts say the trip is not just about the pandemic.
It's definitely more the optics and the message being sent to the Taiwan government and the people of Taiwan, as well as to the government in China, as far as what level the U.S. wants the relationship with Taiwan to be. Obviously, the health secretary is not going to learn much during a 3-day visit.
China claims sovereignty over Taiwan, and the island is a main irritant in the troubled relationship between the world's 2 largest economies. Azar is due to meet Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen during his 3-day visit. That's angered China's leaders, who object to all official contact between Taiwan and the US. Chinese government ministers are warning the United States delegation to stick to the One China principle.
I want to stress that the One China principle is universally recognized by the international community. Any attempt to ignore, deny or challenge the One China principle will end up in failure.
The trip is expected to further fray ties between Beijing and Washington. Both are at loggerheads over trade, technology, human rights and territorial disputes, especially in the South China Sea.
It's possible that the mainland would look at the economic consequences, reminding Taiwan that if they don't want to play with the mainland, that there's going to be a very, very cold, harsh, hard world out there.
China's government says Taiwan is the most important and sensitive issue in Sino-US relations. This rare high-level visit comes as those relations have already sunk to their lowest point in decades. Sarah Clark, Al Jazeera.
Now, it's the highest level US delegation to visit Taiwan in 4 decades, at least since 1979, when Washington switched its diplomatic recognition of the Chinese government from Taipei to Beijing. Since becoming president, Donald Trump has used Taiwan to antagonize Beijing. Weeks before taking office, he rang Taiwan's president and questioned the long-standing US policy of one China. Trump later reaffirmed support for the policy and hosted China's Premier Xi Jinping at his Florida resort, and the two sides appeared close. But that changed in 2018 when Trump slapped tariffs on Chinese imports and launched a trade war. The US also accusing China of military aggression in the South China Sea. Last year, the US approved billions of dollars in weapons sales to Taiwan, fighter jets, tanks and anti-aircraft missiles. Well, journalist William Yang is vice president of the Taiwan Foreign Correspondents Club. He joins us via Skype from Taipei. Good to have you with us. How upsetting is this visit for Beijing?
So Beijing has made it really clear last week that they don't approve this visit, and they also don't want any official contact between Taipei and Washington. So they have promised to launch an unspecified countermeasure for this trip because the geopolitical implication of this trip has actually overshadowed the actual interaction between the health officials between Taipei and the U.S. And a lot of the analysts view this as more of a gesture from the U.S. side to show Beijing that the ongoing dispute between China and the U.S. is not going to calm down anytime soon. And this is likely going to trigger more hostile or responses from Beijing.
So what extent do the people of Taiwan welcome this kind of visit, or do they fear that it's going to bring punishing repercussions from Beijing?
So the Taiwanese people have been dealing with this kind of warnings and also consequences coming from Beijing over the last few decades. So in fact, since Donald Trump came into power, the Taiwanese people have been very welcoming and also supporting the idea that the U.S. is willing to upgrade the interaction with Taiwan over the last few years. And so this move, which also has been highlighted as part of the consequences of the Taiwan Travel Act that was passed last year, has been really received positively over here. And people have a lot of confidence that as long as the U.S. is willing to send more high-level officials and also engage in more dialogues and engagement with Taiwan, they're willing to take this risk, even if Beijing is going to launch any kind of countermeasures later on.
Do they not fear, though, that the U.S. is using Taiwan as a pawn in its fight with Beijing?
I think for the Taiwanese people, any kind of increased international support will be viewed positively over here because people here knew very well that they can only count on these temporary or periodical support from bigger powers in order to secure more long-term negotiation assets or capitals for them later on, so that Taiwan's importance will not be ignored. So even if the U.S. is probably, yes, using Taiwan at this particular point to increase the dispute and the level of the tension between the Sino-U.S. relationships, but for the Taiwanese people, they view that as long as the U.S. is willing to engage Taiwan in its in a more positive way, then they're willing to take the risk. And also, they are also not afraid really about the verbal warnings coming from Beijing unless a very, very serious and very concrete measure was being announced and also launched by Beijing.
William Yang in Taipei, thank you.
Thank you so much.
World powers agreed to provide major resources to help Beirut recover from the enormous explosion that destroyed swaths of the capital and pledged not to let its people down. The assistance should be timely sufficient and consistent with the needs of the Lebanese people and directly delivered to the Lebanese population with utmost efficiency and transparency, they said in a communique. Al Jazeera's Bernard Smith reports.
Here there are the skills, the talent and the enthusiasm.
This is the NASA map that has been issued yesterday.
But these people will not be able to rebuild Beirut on their own.
We have an engineering team and a mapping team working in sync together. We sent scouts on little scooters, and their job is to basically go and examine a building and say, hey, this structure is no longer safe to enter.
They're doing all this because their government isn't. Food is given out to people who never had to ask for handouts in their life. Volunteers are given a safety briefing before heading out with clean-up teams. There are hundreds of these camps across Beirut, hastily set up in the shadows of the buildings ripped open by Tuesday's explosion of 2,700 tons of ammonium nitrate stored in the port. For international donors, one of the hardest questions is how do they get aid to people who won't skim off the top when they have to deal with a political elite that's been doing exactly that for decades.
The Lebanese authorities now have to put in place the political and economic reforms which are being called for by the Lebanese people. It's the only thing which will allow the international community to act efficiently side by side with Lebanon in its reconstruction.
It could cost up to $15 billion to rebuild Beirut, says the city's governor. Its residents want to make sure that money goes where it should.
The government of Lebanon is a criminal government. This is a criminal state. These are warlords. These are people who are responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people in the Lebanese civil war. And we're expecting that a few extra bodies is going to make them cringe. That's not going to happen.
On Monday, Lebanon's Prime Minister Hassan Diab will ask his cabinet to agree to early elections. They'd be held within 2 months.
Well, we can now speak to Nadim Houri. He is the Executive Director of the Arab Reform Initiative, and he joins us now on Skype from Paris. Nadim, today's donor conference raised around $300 million, but for short-term relief. I mean, obviously the big concern here is corruption, and Lebanon's track record doesn't exactly inspire confidence.
No, it doesn't. It's corruption and using that money as well as oxygen for the sectarian political parties to strengthen again their clientelistic networks. And this is what the Lebanese protesters have been saying very clearly. Support us. Lebanon needs help at during this crisis, but make sure that you don't support the corrupt political class. That's possible for short-term, immediate humanitarian needs, because Lebanon has a sophisticated civil society that has the experience and the capacity to answer quickly. Mm-hmm. It's going to be trickier for major infrastructure reconstruction.
I want to ask you more about that because, Nadim, I was speaking to a UNHCR representative earlier, Mireille Girard, and she was saying that they're helping with that rollout of immediate humanitarian aid there. But is there a system in place for longer-term reconstruction, especially of infrastructure, as you referred to? Is there a way of trying to get that money to the places where it needs to go?
Well, Lebanon has had experience with reconstruction of major infrastructure after the end of the civil war, after the 2006 war between Israel and Hezbollah. But unfortunately, these experiences have had to go through state institutions that are known to be corrupt. The CDR, Council for the South, the Fund for the Displaced, which are controlled by key political leaders. So I think it's going to require the international community to stand firm, to insist not only on the highest transparency level, but to build in new oversight mechanisms that include independent figures, that include independent civil society, that can account for how the money is being spent in a way that makes sure that it reaches those most in need, but also that it doesn't get diverted to re-strengthen this, political class.
Sure. Nadim, given the government's history with the port and some other sectors, where do you see the biggest risk of corruption? What sectors here?
The sort of grand theft at Lebanon would really be at the level of reconstructing the port, because we're going to talk there about billions of dollars. Mm-hmm. And secondly, also on any compensation for destroyed property. Again, this is based on Lebanon's existing experience with reconstruction, where political parties can extract resources in many ways. One, they can fake the lists of those who are victims and who benefit. And we saw that at the end of the Civil War. They can also favor particular contracting companies that are close to these political parties and that feed them kickbacks, or that they use during elections to hire people close to them and to strengthen their clientelistic networks, or directly by overinflating the numbers. I mean, we're already hearing rumors that many international experts are shaking their head in disbelief in some of the initial estimates. Again, this is all very early at this point. But yes, I mean, the bigger question, frankly, is shouldn't it be an opportunity to move beyond this political class to make sure that Lebanon gets a national salvation government? And I'm not talking about a national unity government where all the parties are represented, but actually a salvation government with independent figures that can have the trust of the people, that can work alongside the people with the trust, and that could have the trust of the international community. I think we have a narrow window of opportunity. This current government is finished. They've had 2 resignations. There was another minister that resigned last week. But beyond the number of resignations, it really has no credibility. Not a single one of them has been able to go down to the streets to talk to the people. What kind of government can lead any reconstruction if it does not even dare walk the streets of its own capital?
Sure. Well, you mentioned international trust there. I mean, these initial pledges that we're referring to, this $300 million, that's for the short term. Is the Lebanese government going to be able to convince international donors of transparency in order to get more funds going forward? Or do we need to see a full political transition, a structural change in order for that to happen?
Look, time is of the essence here. And this is why I believe change has to happen at 2 speeds. The first political change, which has to happen very quickly, is that this government has to resign. It has to resign simply on its incompetency and its criminal negligence of what's been happening. That can be replaced very quickly by a government of independence that have a strong mandate to do reconstruction. And if it's the right people with the right support, they should be able to work closely with the international community with full sort of transparency and oversight. This transitional government can then lay the basis for the structural changes that are needed in Lebanon's political system. You cannot change a system like Lebanon from one day to the next. You can change the government. That government can start working on a new electoral law. You can set you can, in the meantime, steer the ship that is Lebanon that is sinking. You try to redress it. You try to get it through the storm. And you use the next 18 months, 2 years, to lay the groundwork for new elections, a new electoral law, and hopefully new political parties that will replace this corrupt political class that has destroyed Lebanon during the Civil War and manages to destroy it again and again and again.
Sure, a very long road still ahead. Nadeem Houri there, the Executive Director of the Arab Reform Initiative, speaking to us from Paris. Great to get your thoughts here on Al Jazeera. Nadeem, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Every 3 hours, a woman is killed in South Africa. Gender-based violence is a huge problem, and the government is working on legislation to end it. But activists say change is not happening fast enough, and it is still a long way off. Al Jazeera's Famida Miller reports from Johannesburg, South Africa.
This small group outside the Roodepoort Magistrates Court in Johannesburg is trying to bring attention to what is being called a pandemic. They're protesting against gender-based violence in a country where government statistics say a woman is killed every 3 hours. In court, the family of Juliet Dakada waits for the appearance on camera of 2 men accused of her rape and murder, as well as the rape of her 21-year-old granddaughter.
With this sliding gate.
Her son Mpo shows us where, just weeks ago, he says the accused men broke into her home. Her portrait looks over the room where she was raped, stabbed, and later died.
I didn't expect that my mother would pass away in such a brutal way. It just made me lose hope in mankind. I mean, how does one attack a female and go to an extent of murdering her in her own home?
In the last year, 2,695 women were murdered in South Africa. That's slightly down from the year before, but still a big number.
After the rape and murder of Julia Dakata, 3 other homes were attacked in just 48 hours in this block alone. In one of the other break-ins, an elderly woman was assaulted and seriously injured. People here say that only women and children live in the homes that were targeted.
With close to 100,000 followers on Twitter, Nomboniso Gasa is a well-known gender activist with strong views. She's often come under attack, even threatened with rape.
So it shows, it's a reminder of what happens out there. It's a reminder that gender-based violence is with us everywhere. It can flip just like that.
The South African government is working on new laws to help protect women, including harsher sentences for perpetrators and stricter bail conditions. But there are some who say more needs to be done to understand the rate of violence.
It's too easy to say it's apartheid and colonialism. Obviously, they play a role, but what is that role? How does it interact with the present? How does it shift it? You know, when there are changes in the economy, what is the impact of that history with the now and the present?
As this family mourns and struggles with their loss, they say there's no acceptable explanation for the rape and murder of their mother. Famida Miller, Al Jazeera, Johannesburg.
Those were the stories we had for you, and before we end this news, a quick recap of our top stories. The Gambia COVID-19 update. The Banjul Council launches Coronavirus Know Your Status initiative. We must know what COVID-19 embodies before we can address the challenges it possesses, says Honorable Sala. Vendors at Saregama Market comply with public health regulations. On the international scene, U.S. Health Secretary's Taiwan visit angers China. Beirut corruption fears persist amid foreign donation offers. In South Africa, a woman is killed every 3 hours. That was the end of the news. Please do join us tomorrow for more interesting stories. Stay tuned and enjoy the rest of our programs. Thanks for watching.